Welcome everyone to our 5th session of lockdown learning. Through the last 5 sessions, we've been speaking to alumni that may have graduated from Brunel years and years ago, or maybe more recently, and found out about what they've been doing during this extraordinary time that we've been going through. And they've been helping us get motivation and tips in a range of fields. So we've got another area today. I'm really excited about this one. So my colleague Andrew here, who's welcomed you all, is going to talk a little bit about our speaker today.
Yes, thank you, Kirsty. So just before I do that, just a bit of housekeeping. So everyone is on mute, but like I said, there's a chat box there. So you're all invited to ask questions whilst Neelam talks throughout the presentation. And Kirsty and I will both get these answered for you at the end of the presentation to make sure that if you have anything that's really racking your mind about work-life balance or how to strike a balance best, we'll make sure we'll get that answered for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Neelam. So Neelam was an economics student at the university, and she's now the founder of Stressed in the City, which is a global executive coaching and training company, and she's got experience in the financial services sector as well. So I'll let her fully introduce herself now, but enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Hi, thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for joining me today. So like Andrew said, I'm the founder of Stressed in the City. So I'm a global career coach and trainer. I work with organizations and professionals to help them talent manage and build successful careers. I'm also a STEM ambassador, which means that I encourage and help women and young girls in the STEM industries to encourage them to enter the industry, and also for women who are already in the industry to be able to move up in their organizations. I had a 10-year career break and I returned to work when I started my own business. I had a 10-year career break when I had my 2 children, who are now 17 and 13. So I was out of work for quite some time. And before that, my background's actually financial services. So after graduating in '98, I started my career at Deloitte and Touche in corporate tax. Then I moved to PwC, and then I went to UBS. So like Andrew said, I studied economics, and my most favourite memories of Brunel have probably got to be the Runnymede campus, because in my first year I was based at the Runnymede campus, and I remember the rabbits. Like every time I left my flat, there'll be rabbits everywhere because it's out in the countryside. So I do remember that. And then the contrast of getting on the coach and actually studying in Uxbridge, on the Uxbridge campus, was really bizarre because it was totally different. We had a half-an-hour coach journey every day to get to the Uxbridge campus, and then all I remember about the Uxbridge campus was the stairs everywhere. I was telling Kirsty about this. There were stairs to, I've heard they've got lifts now, but there were just loads of stairs everywhere. But I had a great time at Brunel, and it's a pleasure to be joining you all today. So as we know, we're talking we're all based at home at the moment, and work-life balance is something that's important at any time, at any time basically in our lives. It's something that's always been spoken about, and it's something that, a lot of us try and, we try and deal with on a daily basis. But now, with us being at home and working and, homeschooling and doing everything at home remotely under one roof, it's been at the forefront, and it's also been a challenge with a lot of people I've spoken to. So I'm going to go through why work-life balance is especially important in lockdown, and then we'll move on to some ways in which you can help balance, help manage your work-life balance. And then we'll also look at, does work-life balance actually exist? Is there such a thing as a work-life balance? Can we have it all? And then I'll finish up with some main takeaways. So feel free to, share things in the chat. We're going to start off with a poll. So if you could please fill that in, it'll be great to see where everyone's at. So you should see it come up. So the question is, how do you rate your work-life balance in lockdown on a scale of 10? So 10 is your, an excellent balance, being an excellent balance, and 1 is you have no balance at all. and 5 is somewhere in the middle. So just feel free to fill that in, just so I have an idea where everyone's at. I'll give you a few moments. Okay, so interesting. So just going through it. So 20, I'd say majority of you have rated it a 4. So which is you feel like there's not a great balance there. So we're all in the right place, we're all on the right webinar. And yes, some have rated it a 6. So, between I'd say 4 and 7 seems to be the norm there. Great. So thank you for filling that in. So why is a work-life balance especially important in lockdown? As we know, we're unsure when lockdown's going to end. I know the rules have been eased a bit last few days, but we're still unsure when we will be returning to work and when the lockdown will be ending. So it's really important that we form new habits while we are working remotely. If we're working from home 1 day a week, or we're just working from home for a fortnight, or just a few days, or for 1 month, it's a different story. But given that this could be the new normal for a while, for some companies, they've already said that working from home will continue at least until Christmas. It's really important that we have new habits that are sustainable and habits that we could, keep up with. Secondly, there's no physical escape between work or home. So usually when you leave work and you come home, you have that physical boundary. You use your commute time to detox and to unwind, and also the other way around. When we leave home, we go into work, and as soon as you shut the front door, you can switch off and enter into work mode. But when we're at home, it's there is no boundary, and it's all combined and it's all one. I mean, work before was, something that we went to. At the moment, work is an environment that we're creating daily. So it's really important that we create an environment that is conducive to, good performance, good habits, and we create an environment that works for us. Another reason why a work-life balance is important is, many of us, will have been saying that there's increased workloads. People are being furloughed. There's a lot of things that were not planned. There's a lot of uncertainty. So people's workloads have been increasing, and it's really important that we know how we can manage that. Related to the increased workloads is we're sometimes, we find ourselves we're being available all the time for our, organizations, even to our family and friends, where we're always trying to help, and we're always being available, especially because we're working from home. It's almost, I've heard a lot of people saying it's like we have to prove ourselves, or we have to work harder to build that trust and to show that we are working. Another important reason why work-life balance is important in lockdown is for well-being, both mental and for our physical health. If we don't have a work-life balance, then it can lead to stress, anxiety, burnout, sleep problems. There's loads and a whole array of issues that can arise from not having a work-life balance. And also, while we have been in lockdown, there's so many distractions from the news, being on, from, family, from friends. We could have distractions that are out of our control. We could have, children at home that we have to school, elderly parents, looking after your vulnerable neighbours. We're also multitasking, so we're trying to get everything done, cooking, cleaning, working, fitting in your 1 hour's exercise. So we're trying to get a lot of things done, and that can leave room for procrastination as well, where we're being all things to all people, and we've got a big to-do list, and we feel like we're working every minute of the day with no time to ourselves. And you can suffer from procrastination, where you're thinking, oh, I don't, what shall I start on? And you can feel overwhelmed. So it's really, really important to, realize why we do need a work-life balance, and to have some kind of balance. And So I was going to do another poll to just check with you all, to check in with you all, to see that, you know, now you have a good idea of, you know, why work-life balance is important in lockdown. You know, there's another poll. If you could please fill that in, then that would be great, just to, again, see where you guys are at. So the question is, has it got better or worse in lockdown? So thinking about your work-life balance, do you feel it has got better, stayed the same, or got worse? I'll just wait for the results to come in. Okay, so yeah, so 69% of you think that it's got worse, which is understandable given the circumstances. 19% think it's got better, and 13% say it stayed the same. So thank you for completing that. Thank you, Andrew. And so a few tips on striking a balance. So firstly, I think it's really important to have a schedule for yourself and for others. So, you know, it's really important to have some kind of routine. It doesn't have to be really regimental, but have some kind of routine, you know, the same kind of time you wake up, the same, you know, kind of time you go to bed, maybe do certain tasks during the day, you know, other tasks in the evening, you know, just have some kind of schedule that you can follow for work. This is really important because it helps you be organized and it helps you manage your time. But having a schedule is also really important for other people, because when you have a schedule, people around you will soon adapt to that. So your family, you know, if you or other people you're living with in your household, they could soon, you know, they would learn quite quickly what your schedule is and how they can fit around that. So it's really, really important to have that. And also for your colleagues and for managers and for people that you work with, even for your clients, you know, if they know that, you know, you're usually answering your emails first thing in the morning, or you're not going to get to answer your emails or get to send something they want until late afternoon, you know, because that's the way you work, people soon adjust to that schedule. So it's really important to have a schedule, not just for yourself, but just for other people as well. Secondly, another really simple tip is have a designated workspace. So wherever you are in the house, wherever you're working, have an area that you associate just with work. You know, and if you're living in a flat, or if you're sharing and you've got one room, I actually was speaking to somebody last week where they said, I work on one side of the sofa, and then when I switch off, I actually moved to the other side of the sofa, which is something quite simple but really effective. So she associates one part of the sofa with her work time and another part with her screen time. There was also another person that I spoke to, and they said, you know, my laptop's on the kitchen worktop. Once I finished, I have to put a tea towel over it because I don't want to think about work. I don't want to see work. So they actually put a tea towel over the laptop. So, you know, have a designated workspace, and then that way your mind transits into when you're working, when you're not, and you're not thinking about work. A lot of people say I'm not working, and you're thinking because you're not working, you're kind of like having a balance. But a lot of the time, I'm sure most of you will agree with me that when you are not working, you're still thinking about work. So you may as well almost be working because you're thinking about your work. You're probably not really, you know, present in what you're doing because your mind is elsewhere, and your thoughts are all about what you need to do. So I think that really helps you. You almost got to check out from, you know, from your work bubble. So having that separate space is really, really good. Create boundaries on your time and energy. So boundaries is something I get really excited about talking about. So by boundaries, I mean, you know, boundaries are there to protect our time and to protect our energy. So it's really important that we tell firstly our, you know, family or friends, you know, when we are available, when we're not available, what we can do, what we can't do. So it's really important to be able to manage that and to set expectations. And most importantly, with work and with colleagues, you know, if you're available all the time and you have no boundaries and you're always switched on and you're always working, you're always available on email, you know, your colleagues, your customers, your managers, they'll soon begin to learn that, oh, you know, he or she, you know, oh, they'll quickly do this for me, I can quickly ask them for a favor. So it's really important that you create boundaries by saying, you know, I'm not going to be really looking at my phone over the weekend, or I'm going to be you know, busy with the family, or between 12 and 2 I'm going to be sorting out the children and their lunch, or between 12 and 3. So unless it's really, really important, you know, please could you work around me? So really create boundaries on your time and energy, that, you know, that would work wonders for you, because otherwise we are always available for everyone, and you know, our time and our energy gets depleted very quickly. One reason when I speak to people and I ask them, you know, why do you not have a work balance? Like, what is the number one reason why you don't have a work-life balance? It's usually because their productivity is suffering. What I mean by that is when they are working, they find that what they're producing is not, you know, at the level they want, or the level that's expected. So either they're perfecting it, or, you know, they're finding that they're not productive in the hours they are working. So when they are not working, they basically, you know, they feel like they should be working. They have that guilt that they haven't, you know, ticked off things on their to-do list. So it's really important to manage your productivity. That's a webinar in itself, but just to quickly touch on the productivity, I think the biggest thing is to minimize distractions. I've already mentioned, you know, turn off the news. It's really important to be well informed and to listen to the news, but find certain types or certain times of the day when you can check in on the news. Another one that I think, another tip that's really important with the distractions is turn off your notifications. As soon as lockdown started, I had to turn off a lot of my notifications, especially WhatsApp. You know, everyone was on social media, everyone was at home, and I found the hours that I had for work, you know, I was being constantly distracted. So it could be switching off the home phone for like an hour, 2 hours while you get your work done. I think definitely switching off email notifications. So have certain parts in the day when you check your emails, so maybe 9 o'clock, and then 11 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock, rather than having your email open all the time. Because if you are working and you're concentrating and you're trying to do, you know, your best work, it's very easy for you to be thrown off course and you know, not work in flow. So you know, basically mute a lot of the notifications, and then go in, set a certain time when you go and check those emails, or check your WhatsApp, or check your Instagram. Another important tip, I think, another important thing is transitioning between work and non-work. So maybe there's something in your day that you could do to tell yourself that you're now not working. When we are working and we're physically going to a place of work, we have that tube journey or that train journey, or, you know, that drive from our place of home to get to our place of work. So that automatically gives us some time to gather our thoughts, to reflect, to, you know, think outside the box, and just to decompress, you know, when we're going into work, and also when we're coming back from work. So I think, you know, whatever that looks like for you, it could be, you know, starting to make dinner, it could be going for your exercise, it could be phoning family and friends, or, you know, it could be that time when you are on social media that helps you transition from work to non-work. So, you know, do something, you'll create some kind of rituals that say to yourself, right, I'm not in work mode anymore, I'm going to be in non-work mode. Something that I think you wouldn't really read in many places or find, you know, on the internet when it comes to work-life balance, is how to manage your, match your energy cycle to your tasks. Now, what I mean about that, especially, you know, while we are working at home and we can be flexible, some of us would describe ourselves as night owls. You know, others could say that we're, you know, early birds. You know, feel free to put in the chat whether you're a night owl or early bird, but there's certain, you know, we all have different productivity profiles. So some of us may feel we do our best work in the evenings or late afternoon. You know, others may feel that we do, you know, we're more of an early morning person and we do our best work in the morning. So, you know, really look back at the last, you know, 10 weeks, 10, 11 weeks, or however long you've been in lockdown. You know, have a look, when do you, you know, when are you your most productive? And then allocate your tasks to that. So, you know, if you're not that great at admin, or you're not that great at dealing with numbers, and, you know, it's a part of your role, then maybe do that when you're at your most alert and you're most focused. You know, if it's something you find that you enjoy doing, you could do that maybe after lunch when you're feeling that afternoon slump. Equally, if it's something that, you know, requires you to be creative and brainstorm, you may find that, you know, the evening may work for you. And if you have family and children, you may find after you've put them to bed, that's your best time. So be conscious of when your best time is, and, you know, when your energy is at its highest, so that you can, you know, be more focused, be more productive, and, you know, perform really well. Similar to what we said earlier on, following on from the having a designated workspace, I think it's important to put your tools away. And you know, whether it's your, you know, laptop, it could be your phone, you might put that away for an hour, 2 hours, you know, put anything that you relate to work, you know, put that away. There's a hairdresser I was speaking to, and I remember her saying that now I think she's working, you know, she's found some flexible work from home, but she just said that I just have to literally not even put my laptop away and all my files away. I have to actually, you know, put them in a box, and then in the morning I will take them out again. So, you know, put away your tools and have a digital detox. I don't mean, you know, realistically speaking, I don't mean digitally detox for a whole one day in the week where you don't, you know, access your phones, but maybe an hour in the day, an hour and a half in the day. Have some time where you are not plugged in and when you are not looking at a screen, because at the moment everything is online, everything is, you know, on screen. There's no, you know, there's no events, there's not many places we can go to. So it's really important to have that time off screen, not only for your mental and you know, physical well-being, but also it's to give you that time to reflect, to give you that time to think, to give you that time to unwind. Because when we are not plugged into our devices, that's when, you know, we have our best thoughts, and that's when things come to us. So it's really, really important to detox, digitally detox. Brain dump, that's another one of my tips. Brain dumping, what I mean about brain dumping is that a lot of people say, you know, I can't stop thinking about work. You know, I try not to think about work. It's always on my mind. It's like, you know, I've got this cloud over my head that says, you know, you still haven't finished this, you have to do this, or, you know, you haven't got around to doing this. That can lead to a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, you know, a lot of stress. And sometimes, you know, if we have been busy throughout the whole day, if we haven't decompressed, if we have been plugged into our devices, then what can happen is the minute we get into bed, that's the first time in the day. So, you know, whatever time you go to bed, that's the first time in the day that you're actually still and you actually have time for your thoughts. And then you're probably, you know, worried about getting to sleep because you have to get up early and you can't sleep. And then it's almost like a vicious circle. So if you do a brain dump, you know, either when you finished work at, you know, 6, 7 o'clock at the end of your work day, or maybe even before you're going to sleep, if you do a brain dump, by brain dump, I mean you write down anything that's bothering you. So it could, or anything that you have to do, you know, it could be something factual, like I need to do that spreadsheet, or I need to, you know, finish writing that book, or I need to, you know, make that call to a client. And it could also be something more emotional, like, you know, that's worrying me, that's bothering me, or I need to have that difficult conversation, or, you know, it's almost like brainstorming. So brainstorming and brain dumping, write down any thoughts in your head just so that you can offload them. You know, you're not offloading them to necessarily have them fixed. You're not offloading them so you can forget about them. The idea of the brain dump is to actually, you know, free up your headspace, to free up your mind, just so that you know, you've got room to just think of other things, you know, time to think for yourself. So, you know, do a brain dump, you know, whenever that suits you, at the end of the day, or even before you sleep. And that just kind of like alleviates any worry and anxiety. And, you know, the next morning is a new day and you can look at that list again and take it from there. But the idea is to give you some headspace. A link to the headspace, you know, it is important to have that social time with friends and family. And while we cannot, you know, visit, there's limitations on, you know, visiting friends and family, you could still do that online in the time when you have allocated you know, time for social media. So, you know, connect with your friends, phone your friends, speak to your friends, and you know, that is important time for you to be able to have a balance. And also, you know, exercising, eating and sleeping well. If we don't have a balance, we're hardly going to have time to think about what we're eating. We're not going to have that headspace. We're not going to actually be able to focus on, you know, cooking healthy, nutritious meals for us. Equally, if we're worried about work and we don't have a balance and we're not looking after ourselves, then, you know, that could impact our sleep. A lot of the time people are saying that 1 hour that they get to exercise, I think at the moment it's unlimited anyway, you can go out to exercise for an unlimited time, but it's really you know, to get that exercise and to get that headspace, you know, go for that walk, or go and do your exercise, but have something that is for yourself. And now, just, you know, a few thoughts before we wrap up. Just a few thoughts about, you know, the work-life balance. So just want to leave you with, you know, just want to make you kind of like think a bit differently about the whole work-life balance thing. So we've spoken about why work-life balance is important, and we've spoken about, you know, ways in which we can make sure that we have a balance. But, you know, one thing is, I mean, does everyone really have a balance? We always think that everyone around us has a balance, and social media makes us believe this. So what happens is we will see a snapshot of someone's life and we think, wow, you know, they do everything. You know, they work, they seem to spend time with their family, they have their hobbies, you know, they're cooking great meals. And especially in lockdown, where we will see, you know, posts, you know, you just have to scroll down your social media page and everyone's life looks perfect. So we assume everyone has a balance. And then going on from that, we feel we don't have a balance. So, you know, we already feel like we're failures. So we're chasing this elusive thing. We're chasing this work-life balance that probably realistically doesn't exist. Yes, you can have, you know, you can have some kind of balance, but it's important to not put pressure on ourselves of having it all, because I find it's quite unrealistic to think that we can have a perfect work-life balance. I certainly don't have a perfect work-life balance, and it's something that's a challenge for me. You know, majority of people I speak to, it is a challenge, and the main thing is not to strive for perfection, but is to be able to kind of like, you know, be comfortable. And you know, it's something that has a different meaning to everyone. So what my work-life balance would be very different from Andrew's or Kirsty's work-life balance. So it's really important to you know, realize that and not put that pressure on ourselves. And that's easier said than done. I know that is very easier said than done. But one way that you could do this, one little hack, I think, that I'd like to share with you, is to actually document your time. So, you know, look at yesterday or at the end of today, look at your time. You know, what have you been spending it on? Even though you feel that, you know, you may not have been productive or you didn't get around to doing what you were doing, just list down what you spent each hour on. And then you'll probably soon realize that you have more of a balance than you think. Because when you document your time and you've spent, I don't know, you know, a good few hours working, then you may realize that time you spent playing with your, you know, child, or the time you spent, you know, phoning your family or friends, you might think, oh, I didn't get to, you know, finish off something because I was on the phone. But then that social time is important, you know, that time for yourself, just to have that cup of tea in peace, that is still important for work-life balance. And when you actually look at your time and actually write down what you've been doing, you will probably realize that you've been more productive than you thought, and you actually have a better work-life balance. And that is the true picture when you write down what you spend your time on, not what you're thinking. Because, you know, I think it was the National Science Foundation or someone that said something like, you know, over 80 or 90% of our thoughts are negative. So we're not going to ever think we've got a perfect work-life balance, even when we do. But when you see it as evidence written down, you'll realize that you do, you know, you are more balanced. And also, you know, work-life balance, there is a lot of talk about this. There's a lot of articles being written about this, but work-life balance isn't separate. And now you've realized, you know, we've all realized that in lockdown, it is more of an integration. You know, there is work and life should be blended. It's something that's more fluid. It's not separate. You know, it can exist as a whole. So I think it's really important to accept that, accepting that there is a trade-off. So some parts of your life, you may find that work, takes precedence. Work is at the forefront. Even some days or some weeks, if it's a busy period, you may find that work takes over and you don't have much of a balance. But that's fine, because at other times of your life, maybe work wouldn't be at the forefront, and you will have more time, maybe around summer, or I don't know, around Christmas, but there's time when work isn't so so important. So it's really important to think about that. And I know there's a lot of information there. I wanted to give you guys as much information as I could, but the main takeaways are: be clear, be very clear about what your balance should look like, that's unique to you. Document your time, so see patterns, find your own rhythm. Minimize distractions to improve your focus, productivity, and carve out some headspace and some time to be alone. And find those rituals that signal the end of a working day, and put away your tools. And also brain dump, write down things that you don't want to think about for the moment. And most importantly, rest and recharge. So I mean, I write a lot about supporting professionals with their career challenges and help them build successful careers. So if you'd like to read some of my articles, listen to some of my other webinars, please feel free to connect me on LinkedIn and my Twitter. And my website is there, www.stressedinthecity.com, and my email is there as well. But I hope that's been useful, and thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Andrew, for having me.
Thank you very much, Neelam. That was truly insightful about different examples of how we can get that better work-life balance. And just reading through the Zoom group chat whilst that's been going on, there's been some really great comments that people have been able to share with us about their work-life balance. We even had one comment that someone's been called back to work during this webinar. So,
oh God, yeah.
But they've got it on in the background. So Kirsty and I are going to go through some questions. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, then please add them to the chat box. I'm going to start with a question from Varun. So Varun has asked, Neelam, what advice do you have for maintaining a work-life balance if you're also looking to go back to studying after 2 or more years?
Okay, so I mean, I assume Varun is he talking about working and studying, or just going to study?
I have tried to ask him that question as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I mean, either. I mean, it probably doesn't make too much difference. But I think it's really important to make sure that when you're studying, I think the biggest thing I would say in today's modern world is, when you are studying, rather than having 2 hours of studying, when private studying, when you're being distracted and it's probably not that focused, you're better off doing 45 minutes. But making sure that you're working in a quiet environment, your distractions are minimized, and also being really present in what you do. So whether you're learning to study online or whether you're going into lectures, being really focused. And I think the biggest thing in our today's modern world is to basically minimize those distractions, because there's distractions everywhere. I'm sure when I go and look at my phone after this webinar, there'll be loads of things that will distract me, loads of notifications, some which will be important, and many that may not be important. So I think having when you are working or when you are playing, make sure you're doing those things, and because it's really easy for everyone else around us to distract us. And also I think the other thing is related to that is what I mentioned earlier, the boundaries. So you can say no, and you can say to people, I'm not available, or I can't speak to you until it's 8 o'clock. My mum's very quickly realized that I'm not going to answer the home phone until the evening. And at the beginning of lockdown, I was kind of like making sure she's fine, and my brother lives with her, my dad's there, she's not actually that old either, so she's not really vulnerable. But I'll just say to her, I'm busy, speak to me in the evenings. Equally, my 2 boys, they're both teenagers, they know not to bother me when I'm working. They know not to ask me what's for lunch, or can we make pancakes today, when I'm not in that headspace. So I actually take their phones away from them, and I say, headspace. You need headspace, so it's like a common word in my house. But I think, yeah, it's just having you know, being mindful about that balance. And Varen, what I would say is, you know, there'll be some good days, there'll be some bad days, but as long as most of the time you have a balance, it's fine. You know, you don't have to be really rigid about, today I'm working, now I'm not working. But it's really kind of like you know, just being aware of that and being productive when you are studying or working. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Neela. And we have a question from Esther, who said, any advice on having a quality holiday while staying at home?
On a quality holiday?
Yeah.
Okay, I would say, I mean, I don't know, you know, if she's living with children or with other people in the house, but a quality holiday, I would just say, you know, doing things that that you want to do, you know, those hobbies that we don't have time for. Because the irony is, you know, we were supposed to have all this time now. We're supposed to be in lockdown. We're supposed to have all this time for our hobbies and all this time for the things that, you know, that really float our boat. But what happens is we just we're finding we don't have that time. We cannot carve out that time, even though we are at home, because, you know, everything else is more important. So I mean, it's been, I think, 10, 11 weeks now, and everyone's still saying, and I sometimes feel like this, that, God, where's the days gone? You know, there's no difference between the weekends and the weekdays, and the time just seems to be slipping away. So I think, you know, if you've got this holiday or you have to take annual leave, I think the best thing is to you know, do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. So we're not talking about just the exercising or just baking, but, you know, it might be something, a book you haven't read, it could be a course you want to do, you know, it could be you never have a time to have nice bath soaks, you know, because you're always quickly in and out of the shower. You know, whatever things that are important to you and things that you want to do that you never get a chance to do. So try and, you know, it's your holiday time, it's your time, so do things, or maybe even connect with people that who are, you know, who you haven't had a chance to connect with. So maybe people that you don't immediately are in your immediate social circle, but people that you haven't spoken to in a long time. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
Okay, thank you, Neela. A good question's coming from Emma. So
Yep.
she's asked, how do you maintain a good balance and stay positive if you are unemployed and looking for a job during this time?
Okay, so yeah, I've had a few people who have said that. So I think the main thing, I think it's a really, really good time for you, Emma, to think about, you know, what transferable skills you have to take into a new job, whenever that new job may be. So it's really important, you know, it's really easy, I think, to stress and worry about, you know, not working. And clearly there's obviously a lot of uncertainty there. And, you know, and it is a worry because you're out of work. But I think really using this time to almost think about what you have learned from your previous work experiences, you know, what are your transferable skills? Because one thing I know when I'm coaching, you know, clients, and I say to them, you know, okay, so what are your transferable skills? It's an area they need help on. They cannot package their expertise. They're good at loads of things, but they just haven't had that, you know, they've never had to, or they've never been asked, you know, what can you bring to the table? So, you know, it's fine in preparing for interviews. It's fine to, like, you know, have a really nice CV and a LinkedIn profile. But what it boils down to is, you know, what's unique to you? You know, what are your unique skills? What is your expertise? And, you know, packaging that so that when you are interviewing, when you are applying for jobs, you know, or if you bump into me and I'll say to you, you know, what can we work with? You know, what are your skills? What are your strengths? You're able to be, you know, to quickly articulate them and to leverage them. And that, I think, is a really good thing to do now to stay positive. The other thing is, I mean, that's very much related to your career, but also to just stay positive is, you know, it is that gratitude. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of talk about gratitude, and it's really something, it's another thing we should do in the day. But I think it's almost flipping your brain, and there's a lot of neuroscience supporting this, but it's basically, you know, thinking about what's good. You know, we know that obviously you're out of work and that part of your life isn't as you expect, but, you know, almost writing down, you know, or even saying to yourself, if you don't want to write it down, but kind of like, you know, writing down what is going well for you. You know, what are the positives of being at home and in lockdown? You know, what are you grateful for? And, you know, when you think like that, you know, you may think that I've had more time for my friends or family, or I've had time to really do that CV, or I've had time to cook more, or if I had time to work out every day, you know, we will not get this time back, whether you're working or not working. So it's really important to use this time positively and productively. So I'd say a gratitude list, and also, you know, when you're sitting there packaging your skills, thinking about what you've done, what you've learned, what you're good at, that's 100% going to make you feel good. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question from Claire, who said she has one day to work whilst her husband has their child.
Yeah.
She said she feels overwhelmed, lots to do and not enough time to do them, and feeling anxious because won't be able to complete things until the following week. So
Yeah.
how would you suggest creating a balance when the work time frame is so limited?
Yeah, so she's working one day a week. Yep. And is that one day that she's working, and it comes down to boundaries as well. So I hope her husband isn't listening to this, but it comes down to, you know, being firm and, you know, explaining to her husband that, you know, this time I do need really uninterrupted. So it's being clear on those responsibilities and that expectation. So being firm and clear about, you know, I need that one day. I'm available the rest of the week to do all the chores and everything else, but I really need that time to be productive and to do my best work. So it's having boundaries at home, like we discussed in the webinar, but also I think, you know, boundaries with the people you work with, you know, to say that these are uncertain times, you know, we haven't been in this kind of, you know, worked in this kind of environment, but to be honest and, you know, and hopefully you can be honest with the people you work with and the organizations you work for, you know, where you can say, you know, it's difficult and, you know, I may not get the work done in the time frame that's provided, or maybe she can work longer those days. So maybe between, I don't know, 5 and 8, she's, you know, busy sorting out dinner or helping, you know, put the child to bed. But then, you know, saying that I'll log on at 8, I think it's really important to do what works for you. And in all honesty, your colleagues and your teams, your managers should be understanding. And if they're not, and it is something that's causing you stress, that's a different conversation. You know, it's really important to find a culture, an organization with a culture that is conducive to your values, but that, again, that is a very separate conversation. But yeah, so I think it comes down to, you know, not being distracted, having those boundaries.
Okay, brilliant. So there's one last question that we're going to take. So I'm conscious of time as well. So the last question is, do you have any tips for preventing people from booking back-to-back meetings? Pre-lockdown, there was travel times to travel from one location to another, but whilst home working people fill any available slot in a diary, knowing there is no travel time with video conference meetings.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I was saying to Andrew earlier on, I was part of a panel for the CISI, the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, yesterday, and the topic was communicating at a distance. And one of the main things, you know, I spoke about was having the back-to-back Zoom meetings, because it feels like we've got so many meetings and there's no time to actually do your work. You know, there's no time to be creative or brainstorm. There's so many meetings. And I think, you know, it's a case of saying no, you know, actually really finding out what the agenda of the meeting is. So maybe whoever the meeting organizer is, you know, get into the habit of saying, you know, what is this meeting about? Just wanted a bit more information. And then deciding, do you really need to be on that meeting? You know, or can you say to the organizer, would you be able, are there any follow-up notes, or could you send me, you know, some notes? Or maybe even delegating to junior members of your team, you know, who can maybe attend the meeting, because it's good development for them, and also it frees up yourself. So asking, do you really need to be at the meeting? Same when you're hosting a meeting, you know, be really mindful about who's on the attendee list. Do they all really need to be there? You know, and you know, and also giving people the option of having that, you know, being able to see the meeting on a catch up. So I think it's yeah, again, saying no to meetings, you know, that you probably don't need to be at. And yeah, I think that's the main thing, because it's so easy to just keep booking meetings, and there is you know, it really depletes our cognitive resources, because sometimes you're working, I see that with my husband, you know, is back-to-back meetings 9 to 7 o'clock. And you cannot focus by the time it comes to 3 o'clock, you know, from one meeting to another. So it's really important to try and minimize those meetings.
Thank you, Leela. So great to see other people sharing advice at the same time. Zori, thanks for your additional advice to Claire. But Neelam, great, thank you so much for taking all those questions and providing us with all of your advice. Before we go, did you want to say anything, any last words?
No, but just basically, like I said, thank you again for joining me today. And so, I'm sure your diaries are full, and I'm sure this, maybe you're going to go back to some meetings now, but I hope it's just left you with some kind of idea about, just how to kind of like move forward, because we could be in this period for a long time. And, feel free to, email me or speak to me or chat to me on LinkedIn. And if I could support you in your careers, then, feel free to, reach out to me. But it's been great. It's always nice to, come back to the university you studied at. It takes you to a time, in your life where you were carefree. So it's, really great to be, part of this webinar. But thank you again for joining me and having me.
Thank you, Neelam, and maybe we'll see you on campus one day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My son's looking at university, so I think, I'll be taking him around the campuses, all the universities. So I will bring him to Brunel. But yeah.
We love a plug. So thank you very much. And details of our next session will be released very soon. And we look forward to having you all join us there. So thank you.
Thank you.